Morning guys, welcome to Formula 1 news. Just a day after Max Verstappen triumphed at the Nürburgring for the first time, the agenda is switched once again back to the Singapore Grand Prix the upcoming weekend and what Red Bull can do there. Laurent Mekies says that there is a lot of learnings happening right now, the progress they have made over the last few rounds, the upgrades they continue to bring to the RB21, not just for this year but also for the next, but especially what it means between now and the end of the season and how concerned McLaren should be. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. Starting here actually with a story that was somewhat buried yesterday under Max Verstappen's success at the Nordschleife in GT3 was Jos Verstappen, his father, who was competing in the Belgian Rally Championship, and he won that 17 years after his last success. So quite the day for the Verstappens, but of course Jos's achievements, as usually the case, somewhat further down the pecking order than Max's. But there was lots of talk on where Max wants to go next, what he wants to do next. Max says the car was fantastic after qualifying. I knew that it would perform well in the dry, which of course is exactly what it went on to do. There was also talk though, what next? Because it's the first time I think since Jackie Ickx that any Formula 1 driver has won consecutive races, which include a different championship in the mix as well. No, yeah, the GT3, yes, yesterday, there were some very competitive drivers in that field. There's also GT3 at Fuji this weekend, out in Japan, the Fuji Speedway. So some of the top competitors and best cars and stuff were out there. It's not like Max was, as I said yesterday, racing against drivers that don't know what they're doing, because he was racing against a competitive field, but would be exciting to see Max race against the absolute best of the best in GT3, which at some point he will do. He's got his license now, and as he said, his plan is to race the Nürburgring 24 hours, which I believe does fall next year between Grand Prix weekends. So it is pretty likely we will see Max do that next year. He has ruled out Max racing the Indy 500. He doesn't really care about the Triple Crown. Like, yeah, of course he wants to win Le Mans, and he will at some point. It's almost inevitable. He doesn't really mind about the 500, and that kind of makes sense, right? Lots of the drivers, understandably pretty concerned about driving that race, can be pretty dangerous. And Max says, but look, I'd love to race the 24 hours. I hope that I can do it next year. However, we need more experience. That means we hope to be able to race more NLS races in 2026. So this might be it now. It makes sense, right, for Max to say, okay, I've done my time in LLS this season. Call it a day for this year. Then do more GT3 when he gets the chance. And then next year builds towards, in addition to intentionally, from Red Bull's perspective, a championship challenge next year as well. But even if that's off the cards, or even if it's on the cards, Max will still be putting in the work in GT3 to try and win next year's Nürburgring 24 hours. So that's almost certainly happening. Max talks about that being the next step for him as well. McLaren, even Zach Brown now says that Max has become a little bit of a disruptor in the title fight. I do wonder whether there will be questions given. Certainly this is a question that I would be asking in Singapore to McLaren, is to say, hey, Max is becoming a genuine threat here to you guys winning both championships. Is there a case to back Oscar over Lando to ensure that you get both championships on the boards? I don't think McLaren are going to do that. I don't think it's going to cost them, but it is nonetheless a question that it would be interesting to see the way that McLaren would answer that one. Let's talk about the driver market elsewhere. Isaac Hadjar's birthday is today. I think it's also Mika Häkkinen's birthday today as well. So happy birthday to them both. But Isaac Hadjar's role at Racing Bulls is not a risk. The question is whether he's even going to get a one-step further promotion. There are some drivers, though, at risk. Franco Colapinto is one of them. He admits to not getting up to speed as quickly as he should have done. We know that in Baku he did not have an ideal time in qualifying, but neither did Pierre Gasly. And actually, during the race, they were very similarly matched. Colapinto was actually marginally quicker and has been not bad, right, for Alpine in terms of raw pace since getting up to speed over the last few rounds. It's not been ideal. He's not done anything of note, but the car is terrible, so that is what it is. I think Alpine even did a tweet the other day that basically said, we know that with the machinery we have, it's going to be tough, as it obviously is. But if you're in a bad car, there's almost nothing you can do to save your reputation, but Colapinto does have some things on his side. He's not been horrifically bad. He's not crashing all the time, although he's definitely not had the cleanest of stints returning to Formula 1 after the Williams time that he had last year, which also there were a few moments even at the same corner in Baku last year with the Williams as he crashed this time around in qualifying now. But he does have big backing from Argentina. There are reasons why Flavio Briatore quite likes him. So there are a couple of things that Colapinto does have going for him. He doesn't have a great car though, which seemingly Bortoleto to some extent does. Now it's obviously not a great car, the Sauber, but since Hülkenberg scored a podium in Silverstone, since then he's been out-qualified by Bortoleto every single time, which is extremely impressive what Gabriel Bortoleto is doing. Hulker's not been good in qualifying this year. You know, his Silverstone triumph is remarkable, but he's actually been pretty bad. But then again, it is tough to say. We know that the Sauber's made some progress, but the fact that the only drivers who have out-qualified their teammates in the last 7 consecutive sessions are Alonso, Verstappen and Bortoleto, that is quite the trio, right? So Bortoleto is at absolutely no risk at all, and nor should he be. He's had a very impressive season. But is there still an outside chance for Jack Doohan to actually come back to the grid? Doohan and maybe Lawson had a similar start to the season in the sense that Lawson got 2 races at Red Bull before they sacked him, put him back down to the B team. Doohan got a little longer than that, but they did then drop him for Colapinto. Has Colapinto been any better than Doohan? Maybe not. It's certainly not been a clear night and day, and I think Doohan with more time would probably have done just as well as Colapinto has done this season. So given that in mind, there is apparently a slim chance, according to Planet F1, that Doohan actually gets the drive back next year. Briatore's plans are yet to be finalised. They never are. Doohan is still an outside contender, but it's not exactly ideal. The other rumour is that Paul Aron, Briatore said that Paul Aron is the other main threat. He's effectively the other junior. I think he's an Estonian driver that Alpine have not yet tried. So effectively that's the logic. I was like, well, we've not tried this guy yet, so why not, right? We'll give it a go, we'll send him in, see what happens, in the same way they did with Doohan, and he didn't really deliver like they wanted. And Briatore told Colapinto, be fast, score points, don't crash, which is, quite optimistic. He's not really done any of those, and as a result, there are questions. But is Paul Aron the best option? Is Jack Doohan the best option? We know that Gasly signed a longer-term deal. Do you keep Colapinto? There were rumours linking Perez and Bottas to Alpine, but both of those guys have ended up at Cadillac. The other option out there is potentially Yuki Tsunoda. Whoever falls foul of what Red Bull might be cooking up, there are rumours the other day that possibly Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda could both be gone if they promote Lindblad, and they might even get Alex Dunn away from McLaren. There are some options right now for Red Bull Racing, but assuming Tsunoda is gone, which he might well be, Alpine alongside Gasly, that is something that is worth thinking about. But Briatore right now says they are looking entirely internally into their own program. But, it's difficult to always believe what Briatore says. And also, when we think about Doohan having an outside chance, there are reasons to believe otherwise, just because this was today on Franco Colapinto's story here on Instagram, and you can see that he is, well, I don't even know how this works, but he's embedded the post from Nathan Falco Briatore, and that is Flavio Briatore's son. So, presumably, here he is, Franco, this is Briatore's son. So, it kind of makes sense. They're hanging out, understandable for various reasons, but it's not like Franco Colapinto and Briatore aren't still close to an extent, and given this is happening on the same day that we have rumours that Colapinto could be out of there for Doohan, I don't know exactly what you want to believe. A few other updates around the world of F1. Carlos Sainz says about permanent stewards. This has been a big talking point for a while. Are we going to get them eventually? We're meant to be the best motorsport in the world, and yet the stewards don't even get paid. They get paid travel and accommodation, and they're not even the same every weekend. So the drivers, every single driver meeting, are like, well, are you guys going to make the same type of decisions as the lads last week, or what are we doing here? Sainz has said that basically everyone's on board with this, right? The teams are on board, the drivers are on board, the stewards will be down as well, but it's not happened. Money is, as usual, an issue here, and there were rumours that the teams might even be willing to fork out some of their money, because it wouldn't be much, let's be honest, to ensure that there were some permanent stewards, especially when the teams are spending a lot of money on stuff like this. I just wanted to quickly mention this, because the upcoming season, fuel is going to be a key topic. It very rarely has been an F1 over the last few years. A little bit in 2022 when we went 5% biofuel or 5% sustainable, whatever. This upcoming year, it's meant to be 100% e-fuel. They can also use biofuels, but effectively it is sustainable. That is the idea. Now, these fuels, the sustainable fuels, are extremely expensive, and the teams are not very happy about this. Now, it is actually, I think, possible to get fuel even today that is, let's say, 90 or 80% sustainable, but 20% non-sustainable, because certain engines work quite well with that. A lot of the engines, they need a bit of that petroleum in there to actually work. You can't just fully replace it. That is relatively not affordable compared to standard petrol, but it is more affordable. Whereas in F1, apparently the current cost per litre of Formula 1 grade fuel the current year is roughly $25–30. Next year, you can times that number by 12 to get to roughly $300 a litre for this sustainable fuels. That is a lot of money, and, you know, these F1 cars are pretty thirsty, right? So this is a talking point that not many people are really discussing, but not only is fuel next year going to be relevant to the performance of the cars, the teams that have the better fuel that works better for their engine will get more performance. This is going to be a performance differentiator next year because the sustainable fuels are very new. Some are going to get it right, some are going to get it wrong, I would well imagine, but also they're very expensive, which is a big question of whether that really works, right? Because this is a direction to go in. We go naturally aspirated V8 or we go turbocharged V8 with a bit of a hybrid element run on sustainable fuels, but fully sustainable fuels right now are extremely expensive, and I'm not sure the teams are happy with that if that is going to continue for all that much longer. Fernando Alonso is excited about Aston Martin. I wanted to mention them too because Aramco, the big Aston Martin partner, the feeling is that from a fuel perspective, they might be better positioned than most. Alonso actually talked about Adrian Newey and said that when you're talking with him about the car, you've got to use every single iota of your brain's capacity to actually have a proper conversation with him about the machine. But he does say that he's very optimistic that Aston Martin will get it right. He's pretty certain that they will. They've got the resources, they've got the factory, they've got the money, they've got Adrian Newey, they've got everything on paper. But as he says, the only question mark is when, right? It's not about if, as far as he is aware, it's about when. But the thing is for Alonso is that it can't be too far away or the ship will have sailed, right? It would be very much summarising Alonso's career if he does decide to retire in the next year or two and then Aston Martin produce the rocket ship that he always wanted. But time will tell on that one. The current state of affairs going into Singapore is all about Red Bull. It's race week officially as of tomorrow. There's been lots of talk about the work that Laurent Mekies has done to turn the ship around to a certain extent. Now, look, has Mekies done that much? According to himself, no, not really. He thinks he's come in and simply taken the reins, and a lot of the progress that has been made did begin, the upgrades and stuff began under the domain of Christian Horner. But still, it feels like Mekies has helped change to a certain degree the mindset of the individuals. Günther Steiner said that the team is better off with Mekies in charge rather than Horner, but he stopped short of saying that Mekies has any responsibility for the victories, right? He thinks there's a little bit too soon to suggest such a thing. But the key talking point is, where are they going from now to the end of the season? Is there a chance they can put together a package that will give Max the ability to win this championship? Because a few rounds ago it looked totally impossible that Max could even deliver another win, to be honest. The car just didn't seem to be there. They've brought upgrades, they've run the car closer to the ground, and it seems they can actually get away with it now, whereas that was not the case further before. Their understeer in the slow speed corners seems to have been resolved. How are they over bumps? I think that's a big question. Singapore, pretty much the whole ground effect era, has not suited Max and Red Bull really, especially particularly well. While the results haven't been terrible on paper, not great, but not atrocious. Last year was acceptable, right? But it was certainly not especially fast compared to where the McLarens were. This will be a key test, because if Piastri turns up to Singapore and just wins, we can probably say it was fun while it lasted, right? But that's not exactly a guarantee. And Mekies says there's more to it than just that. There is a clear understanding that Red Bull have put a lot into this title fight this year for Max. They've developed more upgrades on this year's car than basically anyone else has. But they are working, to their credit. They brought new things to the car, they're making it faster, Max is able to capitalise on that, and maybe is in position to try and go on a crazy run and win everything from now until the end of the season. That seems a bit of a stretch, but still, Mekies says that actually this is tactical. We're fighting to learn more and more, because yes, we're trying to improve this car, but everything we learn can carry over, which is interesting because some would say it's totally irrelevant, right? Things are changing a lot, which is true to a degree, but it's not totally true. The Venturi tunnels next year cease to exist, but the ground effect is still a thing. So any learnings on floor edges, suspensions, brake ducts, for example, all of these things are still going to be relevant. And that's what Mekies says, that yeah, we are learning more and more. We're fighting so that we learn more and more. Because even though the 26 regulations are completely different, there's a lot we can carry over from this season. So it's pretty clear what Red Bull's attack plan is here, right? Commit everything to this season and then hope that what you've committed to this year and the learning you've had actually does help you next year. But it's very evident that Red Bull, they are putting their all into getting Max Verstappen this championship, and over the next couple of weeks it will become increasingly clear as to whether that's actually a plausible goal or whether it's not. So very much interested your thoughts in the comment section below. Just a couple of final things to mention here, shifting the focus a little bit to Ferrari. These would be the driver's standings if there were no McLaren. Max would be leading the way now by a decent chunk over George Russell. Then it would be Charles Leclerc, but quite a way behind. So it would be effectively a two-horse race if there were no McLarens this season, right? And as it turns out, it is, well, maybe it's still a two-horse race or maybe a three-horse race, depending on your opinion of Max's chances, despite being 69 points behind with 7 rounds and 3 sprints to go. There's been a bit of discussion on Ferrari. I found this kind of funny because, look, Red Bull are running their car closer to the ground now because they can get away with it without getting disqualified. We know that the Ferrari, if it was able to run closer to the ground, would be a far better car. But they can't because they'll get disqualified for running it too close because it bounces too much at the rear, whatever. That's an issue that has plagued them the whole season long. They thought the new rear suspension was going to fix it. It didn't. And there are some fans now saying, you know what, Ferrari, let's just send it, right? Run the car too close to the grounds. Just take the L, take the disqualification, but just deliver a masterclass, right? Like, that would probably be more entertaining rather than seeing Ferrari drive around in P8, P9. Just lower the car, know that you're going to get DQ'd, but at least give the fans something to cheer about, right? But of course, that's not something that Ferrari will look to do because that will sacrifice placings in the Constructors' Championship and not something they are so keen to do. Congrats to Marc Marquez as well, became a 7-time MotoGP champion today. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.